Like notes through the hourglass, these are the songs of our lives.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Songs of Our Lives. I am Brad Rose. I am a musician, a composer, a writer, the founder of Foxy, Digitalis, and somebody who thinks about music and sound far more than is probably healthy. Each week I invite on a guest and talk to them about all the music and songs that have sort of been with them along their journey. This week I am so excited to have Sarah Hennies, who is somebody I admire so much, somebody who, as I mentioned throughout the episode, has turned me on to so much amazing music in the last 20 years that I've known her. It kind of boggles my mind. I think I actually mentioned that on the very first episode of Songs of Our Lives with Jeff Tobias when we were talking about hot snakes, because I'm almost certain that Sarah is the one who told me about hot snakes. Anyway, yeah, Sarah's got a million things going on at all times. Something I can relate to, and pretty much in my book, all of it is worth like paying attention to. I'm just a huge admirer of her work, and just, yeah. And so we recorded this over Zoom. It is, I think this is maybe the episode I laughed the most during. I don't know. That's hard to quantify, but I had so much fun. It was whenever I was developing this show, Sarah was one of the people I had in the back of my mind. I was like, I have to get Sarah on the show because I'll just have a really good time. And I wasn't wrong. It was even better than I hoped. So, yeah, I hope everybody has at least half as much fun as we did. And I will mention really quickly here that the Patreon section of this one takes the cake. So if you've been thinking about joining the Patreon, this is the episode to do it and check it out, because it is, I was dying. So anyway, yeah, hope you guys enjoy this one. My guest today is a composer, a musician, a percussionist, an educator, and somebody who has probably introduced me to more music that I consider some of my favorite music than just about anybody in the last 20 years. So welcome to the show, Sarah Hennies.
Whoa, that's exciting.
Yeah, there's at least one thing on this list that, well, we'll talk about it, but it's just kind of life-changing, and I wouldn't know about it if it wasn't for you.
Right.
Or maybe would have eventually, but who knows? So how's everything going?
Pretty good. I'm enjoying some time off from almost everything right now, except like pleasure projects, which is very rare. So I'm in a little nice pleasure zone right now where I can like work on music and do podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah, a rare moment. Well, I'm glad the timing of this worked out.
Yeah.
Speaking of passion projects, I don't remember the date. Soon you're doing a performance of a Michael Ranta piece or a couple pieces.
Only one. It was going to be two, but I'm dealing with so many percussion instruments already that it felt like adding a marimba was like a ticket to the asylum or something. But yeah, I have known about his music since I was a student, because my first percussion teacher was a classmate of Ranta's at Illinois, where I went. And once Metaphone started putting out all these CDs, I guess it was like 10 years ago, I was like, oh yeah, that guy. And then got really obsessed with him and ended up interviewing him with this guy, Vincent from Switzerland, and found all these scores of pieces of his that have never been documented anywhere. And so,
oh my gosh,
I've been recording them. So I've finished two. I'm like mostly finished with one, and then recording another one a week from today, actually, which is the thing that we're playing in New York next week too.
Wow, that's amazing. I think it was when those reissues started happening is when because I'd never even heard of them. And
yeah, even now, like the only people I've found who are like, oh yeah, are European percussionists. They know who he is because he runs a store in Cologne called Asian Sound that sells percussion instruments.
wow.
Otherwise, it's like almost everyone I ask is like, who's that? So I'm trying to put this into the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have words for it, but his stuff it just kind of blows me away. And I remember when I first heard it, it kind of shocked me that he wasn't one of these sort of like canon composers or artists that people know about.
Yeah,
but
we talked to him, and as far as I could figure, he just didn't really. I don't know this because he didn't say this, but my impression is that he just doesn't really care if people know who he is or not. And it's like at the end of the interview, I was kind of like, you just seem like someone who just kind of does whatever you want. And he's like, yeah, I always looked for adventure. And that was it.
That's awesome.
So I don't know, but apparently in his old age, all he's doing now is just going through tapes. And like one of the last Metaphone releases is 2 hours of electroacoustic music from 1975 that just was literally sitting in his closet.
Oh my God.
And so there's God knows how much other
Right.
stuff there is because, he's like in his 80s.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting.
I always wonder about that with like people like that or people who've been around for like just what their vaults are full of.
A lot, apparently.
Yeah. I think about that with, I don't know, because I'm always making stuff and I think about it with my kid and I'm like, okay, I gotta like leave this and I don't want to have to saddle my kid with this mess.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I haven't figured out how that's gonna. I haven't solved that yet, but
I'm reacting that way because a large number of gongs have come into my life in the last year and a half just to play this piece that we're doing next week, and it's great. I've never been an instrument collector. I've always tried to own as few instruments as possible because being a percussionist is just like a black hole if you decide that you're someone that owns instruments. And it was like I had a drum set and a vibraphone and that was it, other than, a little box of like, ratchets or whatever.
Right.
But now it's like substantial.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you posted some pictures like the other day of all of various gongs. And have you had any, do you know Vinny Golia?
No, not personally. I think he was kind of around San Diego when I lived there, but that was 20 years ago.
I interviewed him last year and he was showing me some of his gong, and he has his room that he was showing me that he was in could be your future. So.
Well, I'm laughing because my favorite part of the interview from Sound American with Michael is where he's talking about meeting Edgar Varese, and he says, Edgar showed me his gongs, and one he explained to me that he found on the streets of New York and that a dog was urinating on it.
Prized possession.
Yeah.
So who are you performing the piece with next week?
Two clarinet players named Katie Porter and Madison Greenstone,
amazing.
who are really amazing. Madison has a new solo album that just came out of this just like absolutely incredible, like multiphonic clarinet playing. Is really
the one on Relative Pitch.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, that one. I wrote about this. It like completely sort of changed my whole perception of what you could do with the clarinet.
Yeah, they played some of that stuff last summer when we were rehearsing. We had a little show in my garage in Ithaca, and it was just shocking. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, they're awesome. Well, speaking of people you play with, you also have a duo with Tristan Kasten-Krause. Am I pronouncing
I do.
that? Which I'm really excited about. We've talked about this, but I remember when you guys were preparing to play that. I don't know. Was it at Roulette? Or no?
At Issue Project.
Issue Project. Yeah. And one of the things you played was rocks, which is
Yeah.
which I love. But can you just like talk a little bit about the project with Tristan and kind of what's going on with it?
Tristan and I met, and at first we were kind of bonding over Xenakis, and decided that we were going to make a piece together, and that we made a piece like about a year and a half ago that it had my name on it. Like the program said I was the composer, but Tristan was so like integral in writing his bass parts that I felt really weird about it. And the piece was cool and we liked it, but I think there was this sense of like, why don't we just start over and like just do something together from the start? And we have played a few shows together. One of them was completely improvised, and went to a residency for a week last summer and just spent 4 days in a cabin, just like basic, whatever the like experimental music version of jamming is what we were doing. And it just feels really good. And I had, this isn't Ranta related, but there's these two pieces by Jean-Claude Eloi that Michael played on that are both, you know, between 3 and 4 hours long. And for years I've been like, I want to do that. Like, yeah. I want to make a piece that's that big. And I just have kind of like waited around for an idea or an opportunity that would sustain that amount of time. And it kind of feels like this was it. And so, yeah, it's really, I don't know. It's really, we've been talking a lot about how the music itself doesn't really sound all that crazy or adventurous, but it's weirdly hard to describe. That like the way that we're making it, it's like it's composed, but nothing is written down, but also it's kind of improvised, but actually it's composed. Like it's in this really, it's almost in this kind of like we're working the way that like rock bands I was in work, you know, where everyone's just kind of responsible for their own part. And some parts are, you know, my ideas, and some of them are Tristan's ideas, some of them are spontaneous, whatever. But we're, you know, trying to make something, we don't totally know what it is yet, but something that's kind of very long and meditative. And I recently read about this style of meditation called, I kind of forget the name. I think it's called Trataka, which is essentially staring at the flame of a candle.
Whoa.
And it's really, really, really interesting. And we read that and it was like, oh, this kind of sounds like what we're doing. Except, you know, because, you know, I was already thinking about fire because, like you said, there's a bunch of rocks involved and there's a field recording of a rainstorm in it and so on. And so, I don't know, we're just kind of doing it. We don't have a goal in mind. There's no show set up or anything, but we're exploring that, but there's nothing is set in stone at all right now. So it's been a really nice thing to work on. It's like very,
okay. Well, let's get into the whole reason we're here. And to start, we're going to go all the way back to what is the first song that you remember?
I had to think about this for a long time because I was like, my parents were not into music, but my mom always had, you know, oldies radio on, which at that time is mostly like pop music from the 50s. And so I don't know what like the first song is. Like I can't identify that, but the first song that I can remember really having a presence is the song Duke of Earl, which I had to look it up, is by Gene Chandler, who I don't know anything about, but it's this goofy song, if you haven't heard it, that just goes Duke, 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 Duke of Earl, Duke, Duke of Earl. And it just goes on. And I don't even remember why my parents I think they just thought it was funny and would sing it. And later when I was in like, I don't know, 3rd grade or something, we had a basset hound that my dad named Duke, which I'm certain is after Duke of Earl. And then much later in college, my ex's roommate had a car with a broken speedometer. And he said that he could tell if he was going the speed limit on the interstate because the stripe in the line passing the car was the same tempo as Duke of Earl.
Wow, that's science.
Apparently, I've never confirmed this fact, but it sounds right.
I'm
But
half tempted to like go get in the car after this and
yeah,
put it on and see.
but I couldn't tell you the last time I heard that song, but I had to think about it because I knew it had to be some kind of like the Beach Boys or Jan and Dean or
Right.
just something that would have been on the radio when I was like 5 years old.
Right. This is a song I've heard before, but I hadn't heard it in so long, and I went back and listened to it, and he just goes all in on the Duke thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's like a line where it's like, "We'll walk through my Dukedom."
Okay,
like,
I have to go back and listen to it.
it's yeah, and apparently he was at one point before this in a band called the Dukes. So, I mean, Gene Chandler is the Duke.
Okay, I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole later on this. A lot of these songs I did this like pretty fast because I was trying not to be too intellectual about it. But because this one I really had to think about because my first instinct was like, oh well, Bon Jovi, but because that was the first album I bought. But before I heard that music, it was the radio was on, and so it had to be something from then. So.
Duke of Earl.
Duke of Earl, it is.
What? So, do you consider yourself a crier?
Yeah. Are you kidding?
So this one must be. What's a song that will, generally make you cry?
This one is more current, like in the last less than a year that I heard this song, but. Ages ago, like early in my time in Austin, I was working with this architect on a project, and he had mentioned he heard I liked some folk music, and he was like, "Oh, my friends have this duo called the Milk Carton Kids. That you would like them." And I listened to them, and I was like, "Oh, this is nice. It sounds kind of like Simon and Garfunkel." And then I forgot about them until this last year, and they put this new album out, and I was like, "Oh yeah, those guys." And it's incredible. It is so good. And I was reading a little bit about it, and I saw on their Instagram they said that I'm sort of reading between the lines here, but that basically they were trying to figure out how to like not get bored with what they were doing, and that they had recorded this album and then threw it out completely because they said the songwriting like wasn't good enough, and then made this new album because it's something like really different for them, and it really, really knocked me out. It's called I Only See the Moon. And so of course I went back and listened to all their other stuff, and there's this really, really great live show from not that long ago, but it's all on YouTube and was released as an album, and it has some songs on it that aren't on records, and one of them is called Charlie, and it's got a very funny joke that I won't ruin if anyone wants to go listen to it leading into it, because they have this kind of like comedy shtick that they do in between their songs, which is also really funny. And this is, I never thought I was going to have kids until I met my partner, which was close to 10 years ago now. And I used to always bother me when my friends with kids would be like, "Oh, it really changes you." It's always like this hushed, like, "It changes you." And I didn't really like feel like that. Like, of course I'm changed, but not in that way or whatever that means. But I'm listening to this Milk Carton Kids album, and they play this song Charlie that is about having a baby, and I was in the car and I was weeping like a little child listening to this song. It's very sweet.
Yeah.
But then like the reveal in the song is like this guy's singing about the daughter he's about to have, and like how what kind of person she's going to be, and then later in the song reveals that he does not yet even have a partner to have the child with, which sounds funny like when I'm describing it this way, but in the song it's like really, really very touching and like kind of heartbreaking at the same time, and it's a really, really good song. But also apparently having a child does change you.
Damn it. Yeah, no, I had never heard this, and when it kind of gets to the kicker at the end where you realize like, oh, he's singing, it it kind of broke me a little bit.
Yeah, I know. And the other thing is that in the show, right before that song, is another song called "Maybe It's Time," or maybe it's right after. I can't remember, but it's also a just completely heartbreaking, like not exactly a breakup song, but just basically like a song about letting go pain.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's like a 1-2 on the record, and I'm just in the driving, just going, just full dry heave crying on the interstate.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like go down this rabbit hole because this song
They're really great. Like if I mean a lot of it is very like normal, which is fine.
right. Yeah, it's like you can't have. If every song was like this, I couldn't fucking do it.
But some of their albums, definitely you can tell they're kind of like spinning their wheels a little bit, but they are amazing. They're incredible guitar players and great singers, great songwriters. They're really, but this new album is really, it's not at all avant-garde, but it's really unusual and really amazing.
I love that. Yeah, I love this pick. Yeah, I was hoping that I was like, God, this is like not the song that makes you cry. I mean, it's like I don't know what's wrong with me, but I mean, the stupidest stuff makes me cry these days. It seems like.
Oh yeah, I'm like a rushing river of feelings. So it's like doesn't take much.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, on the other side of that, what's the song that'll always put you in a better mood?
This one was I didn't think about too much either, but also is child involved, which is Ivor Cutler's "Cockadoodle Don't."
Yes,
because among other things, it's perfect for a child because it's like 90 seconds long and it has fart noises in it.
Exactly.
And I've loved Ivor Cutler since college, and but I have revived the Ivor Cutler Trio record in my household since I had a kid, because there's 2 or 3 songs on there that, when he could just, barely talk, when I would play like, "Good morning, how are you? Shut up." or like, I'm happy. But
Yes.
it's those 2 and Cockadoodle Don't are my favorites. But yeah, it's just like instant pleasure.
Yeah, this is one of the. I didn't know about Ivor Cutler before we met. This is one of the things on the list that like I learned about because of you. And I always feel like this album is this. It feels like this improbable. It's like how did this get made? How does this exist? Like he's just this wonderful madman and did this thing with, what's his name, George Martin, and like what the fuck? Like I mean, yeah. He's such a, I don't know, an endlessly fascinating character to me.
Yeah, I heard him because I went to school in England for a year in college, and because I wanted to go just because I was interested, but I had a good friend that lived there, and that was who turned me on to Ivor Cutler. And like, I remember the first thing I heard was the album Ludo, but then I went and looked up Life in a Scotch Sitting Room, and it's just basically this like stand-up comedy album. And it's like The Simpsons watching Prairie Home Companion, where they like say something and everyone just goes wild, and the family is just sitting there like, what the fuck is this? And it's the same. It's, as far as I can tell, it's like deep Scottish humor. And I was like, I have no idea what is happening here. But I really, all of his stuff is, I mean, I don't know. I guess I didn't plan it this way. I guess it's sort of milk carton kids-y, because a lot of it's just like incredibly sad, but like so surreal and funny. And I guess that's my zone.
Yeah. Sad, surreal, funny.
Right.
Well, if it's not Cockadoodle Don't, what is objectively the best song of all time?
This was a difficult one. But I went for best band of all time, and so I just picked one of my favorite songs, because when I was a teenager and in college, and well now I guess, but like 90s Discord records was like, that was it for me. That was like my music. And Fugazi was never my favorite Discord band. I liked them, I saw them a few times. They were incredible every time, but I never listened to them as much as a lot of my friends. But at some point more recently, like in the, I don't know, last 10 years or so, I was like, you know what? This is the best rock band. Like,
Yeah.
like nobody did it better than this band in every way. Like all the cliches, like being offered a huge record deal and saying no, and being for political causes, and like playing these shows that are just crushingly great. Like you just can't watch that and be like, eh.
Right.
But, but I picked the song Facet Squared because the first song on the Kill Taker. I just think that's like one of the most incredible openings of an album that I've ever heard. It's just like they're smashing buildings or something. It's so huge, and I just have so much respect for them. I know that's such a cliche, but like, like someone, I forget what it was in, but somebody was like, how do you think in this, violent macho scene, Fugazi like got away with telling people like not to mosh and not to hit each other? And whoever they were talking to, the person was like, it just wasn't cool to make Fugazi mad. And it's like how do you achieve that without like being like a macho dickhead? And they weren't like, they were like dudes, and it was aggressive music, but not macho.
No. Yeah. I don't know. I totally like their greatest rock band ever. And I don't, when you put it like putting it the way you just put it, it's like, I don't know how that happened. Like, and like, I can't even imagine that happening now, let alone how it happened in the 90s or like anytime.
Well, it's also, it's like, and of course, they had all of these other bands before Fugazi that like helped facilitate this, but like I was and continue to be like really, really heartbroken about what happened to independent music. That like around 2000, like I saw the Strokes, and I remember seeing that and thinking, well, like what I love is over now. Like the record industry has now decided that this is worth money and it's worth imitating. And I was totally right. And not that I'm trying to be like, but that Fugazi is like the ultimate version of everything that I cared about with independent music, is to run your own record label, book your own shows. They don't cost very much to go to. The music obviously is like amazing.
Right.
You're not an asshole, but you're really serious. Like just like everything. It's just incredible that what that band did. And all of their albums are like different from one another. Like they were always pushing forward. It was just completely non-commercial, totally independent music. And I just think that's like so. Yeah, I'm like getting choked up talking about it. I told you it's easy to make me cry. It's like I know it's very easy to tread into like old timer, like things were better when I was a kid sort of stuff, which isn't what I'm saying. Like there's lots of great stuff going on now too, but it's like I really, especially like teaching at a college with a lot of younger musicians. It's like they're great. Like they're, for the most part, they're great, but I don't see that spirit.
I mean, it seems like that. It seems like that spirit has been just strangled out. I mean, I don't even know if it's. I think that like I have a niece who she's 22. Obviously, my kid's 10. Has no idea, but like, it's not even that it's like been strangled out. They just have no idea it was a thing that was possible or something like.
Right.
And which is in some ways worse, because it's like, God, like how do I?
Well, I just think people, indie music in the 90s was like, major labels are fucking stupid and we don't have access to it anyway. So we're going to create our own power structure, and we're going to create our own economy. Like I remember when bands, I was booking shows in my hometown for a while, and bands would just show up with like notebooks with phone numbers in them. Yeah. Like, and that's not a good thing. Like I like having a smartphone. I like going on tour and not getting lost, but the thing that's valuable about that is that you had to really build relationships with people to do something. And that's the thing that was it, because, you know, I was like a shy, weird, awkward little teenager. And like, that was how I found community and friends and like anything that made me happy. And it was certainly was the music, but it was also like everything around it that like,
Right.
Like I'll never forget the first time I got taken to a punk rock show, and I was like, it was 13 years old and like barely 13. And I don't know how exactly I thought of it at the time, but now it's sort of, my reaction was like, oh, I can just go see a band right in front of my face. Yeah. And this is so much better than any rock concert that I have ever been to.
Yeah. I mean, I have memories like that too, or like, I still remember, and this is kind of different, but like the first time I was maybe 14 or maybe 15, and I heard the Mountain Goats.
Oh yeah.
And thinking, oh, you can just get a tape recorder and just make your own music.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for anyone.
Yeah, and then just send it to people and meet people that way, or share it with, and it was, I'd still like, I don't know. I mean, and there's still some of that part of it, I guess. I mean, in some ways, it's a whole lot easier to make your own music and not wait for anybody. And like, but it's not.
I should say it's not like this doesn't exist anymore. Like I really, really love this folk punk band Pigeon Pit from Olympia, and I follow them on Instagram, and they're as far as I can tell very young, like in their early 20s. And you know, I see videos of them playing like tennis courts and living rooms and stuff, and it's like this still exists. It's not like I just want to say, it's not like I think that punk rock stopped happening, right? But that the infrastructure for it is really destroyed by, you know, everything that you would expect. Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm also surprised this is literally only the second time Fugazi has come up on this show.
Wow.
Yeah, and the other one was for favorite lyrics. So.
Oh, okay. That was a hard one for me.
Yeah. Okay, well, on a totally different tangent, what is a song that you used to love but you heard it recently, or you think about it now and you're like, oh, not so much?
So I picked this because the story is funny, but also because I couldn't think of something else where I was like, other than just like, oh, I was 13 and I liked Skank and Pickle for a second, like, you know,
right?
But that. When I was in college, I was introduced to the music of Vinko Globokar, and I think this is the only experimental music thing that I picked for this, since it is called Songs of Our Lives. But I was in this experimental music seminar with Herbert Brun and around all these like really rigorous modernist experimental music people, and found it really inspiring. And I was like, I'm going to be serious experimental musician, and blah 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 blah, and. There's this piece by Vinko Globokar. He's a Slovenian composer, but he's been in France like forever. It's actually, he must be really old by now. But and you know, when I was in college, I was looking for unusual percussion pieces to play because I was a percussion student. And there's this piece he has called Corporel that is for no instruments. It's for a shirtless percussionist playing on their body, and there's a few dimensions to this. That what the simpler one is that when I was in college, I thought this was really cool and really interesting and really adventurous. And now when I see percussionists doing it, it just seems stupid to me. Like it's like a spoof of performance art or something. And like, and when you see Vinko do it, it's like funnier. But musically, it just doesn't do it for me anymore. But at the time, it felt like it was some sort of like social statement or whatever. But more than that is that twice I met this person, once in college and once in grad school. And he, by a pretty wide margin, is the biggest asshole I have ever worked with. And this was over 20 years ago, and I'm still angry at like some of the stuff that I had to do and put up with for this guy. And it really it's like I couldn't listen to his music anymore. He has this string quartet that I actually really like a lot, where it's a for string quartet with, and they all speak in a few different languages, and I can't listen to it anymore because I was just like, all I can think about when I hear this person's music is what a shithead he is. And he, like, the first time I was playing percussion in this large ensemble piece called Zlom, and one of the things that I had to do was shatter a huge pane of glass with a hammer that was amplified. And you know, I was like 20 and I thought all this was like really cool, and I was the only percussionist on this huge chamber piece, like 20 musicians. And at the time, it seemed normal to me that a composer would be like, here's how you do this without getting all cut up. and I did it, and it was fine. But the whole rehearsal process, he was just screaming at everyone. And like one time the score was all in French, and he screamed at me because I accidentally one time mixed up the French words for whistle and ratchet. And he's like, why would you play whistle when it says ratchet? And it's just like, and he's like screaming at some guy who has to leave early because he has to go like close up the shop that he left work for to play for this person. And then I don't know. There's more. Yeah. I don't need to go on about this if you want, but I'm sorry. The end of the story is that the night of the concert, he was walking past my percussion setup, which was enormous. And this was like minutes before the concert. He bumped into the glockenspiel and knocked it onto the floor, which is like the loudest, messiest instrument you could possibly knock over. Like all of these just shrill metal pieces just went everywhere. And all he said was, "Excuse me." It's like, God, you are so far gone that you just literally lack the ability for just basic kindness.
Wow.
And so that's the answer to your question.
It's perfect.
And then he came to San Diego 2 years later, and he was a total jerk then too, but in a completely different way.
Jesus.
He didn't remember me either. He didn't remember me. So,
well, God, that sounds awful.
It was awful, but now I'm telling you about it and I'm laughing, and so that means it was worth it.
Yeah. You'll always have the story.
Yeah.
Well, kind of on a different, maybe 45-degree angle from that, what is a song that some people absolutely hate, but you don't care? You love it anyway.
This one I had to think about for a little bit, but then when it came to me, I just started cackling, which is, I love Bobby Conn. Like total hero worship. One of my favorite artists ever. I saw Bobby Conn in the Glass Gypsies when I first moved to Austin, and I felt like I was seeing Led Zeppelin or something. Like, it is, without question, one of the best shows I have ever seen. And I have a lot of these things, but this one in particular, I think because of the nature of the music, frequently, I mean, I've just stopped trying to turn people onto him unless I have the sense that it's someone who's going to be receptive to it, is that people will just be like, okay. And the album that got me into him is called The Golden Age, because in San Diego, this was in like 2002 or 3, I went to see Annual Notice by the Trail of Dead, like right before the moment they became like a huge band, and I really liked them at the time. And for some reason, Bobby Conn was their support act, and it was Bobby Conn and his wife, a drummer, and then this bass player who looked like he fell out of a ditch next to the Allman Brothers, and then this guitar player who he played with, whose name is Sled, with one of those 7-string Ibanez guitars with the handle in it that Steve Vai played.
Guitar, yeah.
And the guy is like a shredder, but he looks like he's like 50, and they're all wearing matching tennis suits, but Bobby Conn is like 5 feet tall, and he has this like bob haircut. It was so weird and funny. And I could see I've never had a bigger grin on my face. And everyone around me I could see was like, what the fuck is this? And when will it be over? The song that I picked is the last song on the Golden Age. It's called "Whores," which is about a trans hooker.
So Bobby, this is another. I had never listened to Bobby Conn until we met, and I have an affinity for Bobby Conn because it's just like, I don't know. He's like this shapeshifter weirdo. Yeah. So yeah, like to me, like Bobby Conn, like everything, I don't know. I feel like everything he does, if it was anybody else was doing it, it just would, not that it makes sense, but it does, because I don't know. I can't explain Bobby Conn.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, but I have like such admiration for him and people like him who they just go there and then go, well, it's like, here's this line where everybody thinks like, okay, like, and it's just like, fuck this. I'm running.
Well, there's also like, I made this piece in 2016 called Falsetto. That's this like crazy kind of performance art solo percussion piece. And when I did that, the first time I did it, it was super spontaneous. I was playing a show. I was opening for Jacob Wick. And when I used to play shows locally in Ithaca, I would just use those opportunities to just try stuff because, it's a small town. It's always the same audience. I don't want to do the same thing all the time. And the first time I did that, it was a really big moment for me because I had never thought about being funny as a musician before. And the piece is not like only funny. Like it's actually pretty serious and pretty like hard to watch, I'm told, as an audience member. And it was really powerful to me to realize that like I can be funny and serious at the same time, because that's that's like a more, I mean, maybe this is over intellectualizing something like Bobby Conn, but that's like a more complex like human experience, because it's like, if something's sad, you're like, oh, it's sad. If it's funny, it's funny. But if it's sad and funny, at least it certainly, judging by what I saw from audiences all the times I saw Bobby Conn, people are like, don't know what to do. Yeah. It's like, and that's like really exciting. And that he's such a good songwriter, and the band was so good. And the songs that he's singing are just absolutely ridiculous. That was really, and it's just like, I mean, Bobby Conn and his wife are married and they have kids, but like, that is a queer band. Right. Like, I don't care what your sexuality is. That is like the queerest band ever. It's like, you've got this like the Glass Gypsies. You've got Bobby Conn, who's 5 feet tall with a bowl cut. His wife, who's much taller than him, playing violin. This shirtless keyboard player with like a fur jacket on, and a drummer with shorts that are way too small for him. And it's just, you just see it and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then they play. And it was particularly the Glass Gypsy show, where the other times I saw Bobby Conn, I just felt like people were angry. But with the Glass Gypsies, I could see it, that people were just absolutely stunned. And it's like, what could possibly be better than that?
Yeah, I mean, that's to be able to do that and get, like, that's not easy. Yeah.
But I remember there was this was a long time ago. I think there was some inkling that like I could live in Chicago or something. And I was talking to a friend and I was like, oh, I could play drums for Bobby Conn. And I was like kind of joking. And he just laughed and was like, I don't think that would be hard to do.
Wow. Just imagine if you had,
If only.
If only. Well, I don't know that I'm trying to think if I know anybody else who loves Bobby Conn, but
I'm sure I do, but no one at the level that I do, that I can like talk about it, like like have a conversation.
Well, that's like a perfect answer, because I know a lot of people who, because I've had conversations with people about Bobby Conn. I'm like, oh, you should listen. And then everyone's just like, I don't, what do you mean? Like,
Right.
What is wrong with you?
Why would you do this to me?
Right. Okay. Well, gosh, you could have picked a Bobby Conn song for this next one. I bet.
I could have picked the same. I could have indeed picked the same song.
So if it's not horse, what is the most romantic song?
This one was hard for me to pick too, but I had this. So my partner is a visual artist, and she likes the music I play, but is not like into music generally. Like she likes music, but she's not a music person. And
right.
when she shows an interest in something, I get excited. And we were working on our house once, and this song was on, and she was like, "Whoa, this is hot." And it's by Daniel Romano, who I will say is the greatest living songwriter, called She Was the World to Me, which is a song on his first album, which is one of a few like country albums. And it's his first solo album. And so it's not really like my favorite one. I love his country albums, but this one, you can kind of tell it's a first album, and it's a little bit intentionally, but it's a little bit like hokey and, kind of like doing a genre. But this one song, She Was the World to Me, is just this solo guitar and singing, and it sounds like it's a live recording. So it's like, it's very real. But, it's another like lonely love song. But there's something about the way he sings that's just like achy, where it's not, technically it's a sad song, but it doesn't really like make me feel that way. It's just more kind of like, wow, it like inspires this sort of like, awe is not the right word, but
I know what you mean. It's in that vicinity.
But I just didn't want to do this and not mention Daniel Romano, because I really think he's really like something special. Although I think he's like pretty popular by now, but it felt like there was this long stretch of time where he just was putting out perfect album after perfect album, and it didn't seem like he was really like, I could see that he was touring Europe, but it was, my friends saw him in Philadelphia, like in a restaurant, and that half the people there were like not even paying attention, kind of stuff. So,
wow.
But I just, there's something about his music that really moves me. And I like that he's kind of a shapeshifter and one of these people that just clearly does whatever the fuck he wants. Like he said that he left New West Records and went back to his own record label because New West wouldn't let him put out enough records. He was like, yeah, they want me to do the one album, one tour a year thing. And I just like, I can't do that. I write too much. And,
wow.
I guess I get awesome. Really, I mean, this is like Michael Ranta. I just am really a big admirer of these people who are just like, and Fugazi too, who are completely in control of their own destinies. And he's definitely one of them. He's from like a town near Niagara Falls in Ontario, and like his record label is run by him and his high school friend, and they have like a booking agent and stuff. But in general, it's like all seemingly totally self-contained. And I like his other band, Ancient Shapes, put out and I think you know this, but I have a joke that like, if a band I like signs to Sub Pop, then like that means that their next album is not going to be good. And there's an Ancient Shapes, Romano's other band, Ancient Shapes, put out a split 7-inch on Sub Pop last year, and I was like, if you ruin my fucking favorite musician, I am going to be. So I will bomb your offices because it was the same with Martha, who actually I also picked a song by on this list that I was like, I just for the longest time I could see that Martha was getting really popular, and I was like, I just know that Sub Pop is going to sign them. That it's like Sub Pop's going to sign them, and it's going to ruin my favorite band. And I'm going to hear them in the Gap, and I'm just going to break down crying. Like, but they didn't do it, as far as I can tell. Actually, just yesterday they announced a new Daniel Romano album.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, well, he broke the curse.
Well, it's only a split 7. It's only one
Yeah.
song.
It wasn't enough like bad mojo.
Right.
If it had been a full 7-inch, it was fucked. But
right.
Who was the split with? Do you remember?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm like,
I'm a super fan, but I'm not. I didn't buy that. I couldn't spend whatever it cost with shipping for 90 seconds of one Ancient Shapes song.
Right. Especially when you could just like go on YouTube and hear it.
Exactly.
Well, what's a song that changed your perspective on an artist, either for better or for worse?
This one definitely for better is that for years and years and years, I would see Arthur Russell's name all the time. And for whatever reason, I just never like checked it out. And then Aaron Russell, my old bandmate from Weird Weeds, met his current partner, Sheila. And Sheila is a huge Arthur Russell fan. And Sheila's also a huge Scott Walker fan. So we were talking music. And I was like, well, if you love Scott Walker and Arthur Russell's your favorite, I got to hear this person.
Yeah.
So I asked her, like, what album should I listen to? And she said, Calling Out of Context. And I listened to it and I just was like, I don't like this. And like, it's not like I hated it, but I didn't get it. It didn't do much for me. And, months later, I tried again. It's one of those things that like, I kind of kept thinking about it. Like I could see that I was missing out on something, even though I wasn't into this record. And then it wasn't until I saw something online somewhere about his pieces called Instrumentals. And I saw something about like Arthur Russell's foray into classical music. And I was like, what is this? And at this time, I hadn't heard World of Echo. I hadn't heard really anything. I had only heard this one album. So I didn't really have a sense of the vastness of like the Arthur Russell world. But for whatever reason, because it has all of the characteristics of music that I like, the album Instrumentals really, really, really grabbed me. Because it was one, it seems so normal. Like it's just like kind of major chords repeated a bunch of times with somebody playing a shaker. But it had this like mystery to it where whenever, if something makes me say like, what is this? I almost always end up loving it because it's so rare that I hear something that I'm like, what's going on here? And then, and so I really, really, that really knocked me out. And then I heard, I started listening to all these other records and I heard World of Echo and Love is Overtaking Me. And I watched the documentary and I was like, oh yeah, actually this guy is, not that I didn't believe people, but that I got it. Like I understood like who he was, but I still Calling Out of Context doesn't really do it for me. But when you've got like 50 albums, you cannot like one of them.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean,
yeah.
I love like the instrumental stuff. I don't know. I always like it's like this in this piece, like it just makes me, I don't know. It makes me feel good. Like,
yeah.
it's just that's like the best way I can describe it. And I like Arthur Russell to me, like just thinking about, like I remember watching the documentary and just thinking about his story and stuff. It just like a lot of his music, it's amazing to me that it was made when it was, and because it's still like, it sounds like something people are still trying to figure out how to do now.
Right.
Like,
and I also, I just remember in the documentary, there's that film, the video of him standing up playing cello live by himself. And I think it's probably World of Echo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is the saddest music I have ever heard. Like,
yeah,
it is. I mean, he's like literally like looking into himself when he's playing. He's like looking at the floor and it just sounds like it's just coming like straight from inside his head or something. It's really, really, really amazing.
Yeah. It took me, I feel like I was late to Arthur Russell because it was what I like kind of similar, like a thing that people I knew loved and talked about. And I just never, I don't know. There's only so much time in a day. I mean, I had the same experience until recently with Low. So fuck, I don't know.
Right.
There's just, yeah. And it's also one of those things too, at least for me with him or like with a band like Low, like at some point it just feels like impenetrable because there's so much and there's and so it's like, I don't know. I think it's not for me. But then,
Well, with someone like Arthur Russell too, you can just kind of like think, well, what kind of music do I like? Which Arthur Russell album did he do that?
Yeah, that's
because it's like the Love Is Overtaking Me is incredible. I love that album because I have a penchant for like intimate sounding singer-songwriter records that are kind of weird. Like, and so it's like Love Is Overtaking Me and World of Echo and instrumentals are all just really, really spoke to me.
Yeah. Everybody can have their own personal Arthur Russell.
Exactly.
Okay, we said this one was hard. What are your favorite lyrics?
I'm not a lyrics person.
Yeah.
And to give you a sense of what that means, just last week, my friend Clifford is always texting me about like kind of like C-level 90s post-hardcore and emo, and being like, yeah, I listened to C-Clamp today. It's not that good. But we were texting about Helium, whose first couple records I really love, and well, both of us are big fans, and I hadn't listened to any of those in a really long time. And the Pirate Prude EP was always my favorite Helium thing, and so I don't know how many times I've heard that album, but a lot, like many, many, many times. And I'm not joking. 2 weeks ago, that I was listening to the song XXX, which is the one that was on Beavis and Butthead, and I was like, oh, this song's about a prostitute. And it's like, the lyrics are literally, I'm gonna go out on the street and make some money. Like, and so this is the degree to which lyrics are not like a thing in my life all that much. But I mentioned that. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, the song could literally basically saying, this song is about a prostitute.
I mean, it might as well say that. It like, I felt so stupid. I mean, that's why I'm telling you, is I thought it was so funny. It's like, what is the matter with me? But so I'm a sound person, but I mentioned that piece Falsetto earlier, the one where I like said I could be funny, but that I wrote a short essay about that piece around that time, like 2017 or something, and was talking about playing with all these little bells and thinking about a bell as like kind of a queer object, because like the definition of like a very well-made bell is like a richness of overtones and like a richness of sound, which is, not it's vast or whatever. I don't know to get into my whole like queer this, queer that. But around the time I was writing that is when the second Martha album came out. And the first Martha album was really important to me because I was listening to it constantly when I was getting a divorce. And then the second one came out and I was like, oh boy, like my new favorite band released a second album. And it took me a while. At first I didn't really notice it as much, but the last song on the record is just this simple guitar and vocal song. It's pretty short. That is called, I have to even look it up, St. Paul's parentheses Westerberg Comprehensive. And he quotes Bastards of Young in the lyrics of the song. But the lyric that I chose, which I quoted in this essay about my own piece, is, we are not worthy to receive you. We are the daughters and the sons. We're the secondhand trousers, blazers and blouses, irredeemable ones. And it just kind of reminded me of the way I was thinking about playing with all these little bells, because the reason I have them is because they're cheap. And it's like this burning question I have in my life is why are there hundreds of bells in thrift stores all over the world? Is that like, where did they come from? And because someone bought it new. At one point it was new and someone wanted it, and then they got rid of it and the world decided that it was not worth anything. And there's a line on that song about where it's like, they caught you kissing on the bus, but when they asked you about it, you said nothing because some lines can't be crossed or something like that. And it's like, oh, I know what you're singing about. And so it's just one of those songs that just hit at like the perfect time of my life, when I was already like thinking about this kind of stuff anyway. And I like that it's kind of, the song has this kind of like resignation to it. Where it's not like a big feeling song. It's just kind of, it's very British. It's just kind of like, yeah, That's
Yeah.
what that's where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. What a line. Jeez.
I know.
Or a verse or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so what is the last song you completely fell in love with?
Their New West Records just put out this 11 LP box set by a band from the 90s called Acetone. And I had never heard of this band before, and I don't know how. And I saw Drew from Matmos posting about it. They posted a picture of himself holding this box because Drew wrote the liner notes, which is like a 60-page book, because I guess Drew knew them somehow in San Francisco. But I had never heard of this band before, and because Drew's posting about it, I went and checked them out. And particularly their self-titled album just absolutely blew me away. And this was just a few months ago. It blew me away to the point that I got the box set, because I just was like, it's kind of, this self-titled record is kind of in the universe of those early Low albums. The music is really different, but it's slow and it's so skeletal. Like, it's just the most like clean guitar, bass, drums, like kind of plaintive vocals. It's another one of these things that kind of like seems like nothing the first time you hear it, and then you're like, what's going on there? But yeah. I'm sorry. The song I picked is called "All You Know," which is from the self-titled record. But I've just been kind of slowly, casually working my way through this box set, and I don't know how I never heard of this band before, but they're really, really great.
So I said at the top of this that so this is the one that I'd never heard of, that once again you've like introduced me to something that fucking like just floored me.
Well, this
like,
band was on a major label. Like they were really big, and so I don't know how.
Yeah.
You know, they've got 11 LPs worth of stuff, and it just completely escaped me.
Yeah, I'd never like, I listened to this song when you sent over the list a couple weeks ago, and then I just went down the rabbit hole because I loved it so much. And yeah, it's so weird. It's music that feels like it's on the surface it's barely there, but when you like sit and listen to it, it's just it's like heavy and like does so much, and I don't know, it's so
well
good.
It's also it's like really, really sad, kind of depressive music, but it doesn't sound like that,
right?
Like yeah, you know, it has this kind of, I use the word resignation already to it, but it has this like almost like apathy or something of like this kind of unfeeling sadness or like numbness, I guess is the best word to put it. That and of course that's like contextualized because one of the people in the band killed himself, which is like, I don't know how much that is coloring the way that I hear the music, but I think I would be saying these things whether I knew that or not. But it certainly, you know, puts it in a clearer context.
Yeah, I still can't figure out how I didn't know about this, which, I mean, that sounds in some ways sounds silly, like, oh, I should know about everything. But I mean, this wasn't,
this was a big band with like multiple albums.
It wasn't some obscure thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, how far have you gotten into the box set? So have you listened to all of it?
Yeah. Oh, no, I haven't listened to the like extras disc yet.
Okay.
But one of them is literally on my turntable right now. I was listening to one of them last night.
I'm very tempted by that. Not that, but I'm so glad that I know about this now, because it was like one of those things too. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, this is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, got it. That's cool. I don't even think I even realized that Drew did the liner notes. That makes
and when I saw on Instagram that he said he did the liner notes, I was expecting like, you know, one page of a CD booklet or something, but it's a 60-page book that Drew wrote.
Oh my God.
Like, wow. I mean, they're short pages. It's like an LP sized thing with like photos and stuff, but still, it's like he goes in depth on every single record.
That's awesome. Man.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice thing.
Okay, well, what's a lyric that you thought you knew, but then you learned it was something else and it blew your mind?
This one is by the KLF, who had a hit song when I was, I think, in middle school called 3 a.m. Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this like backing vocal where it'll go like, I'm trying to remember the lead in lyric, but there's like a backing vocal that goes, ancients of moo moo. And when I was a kid, I was like, what are they saying? And I thought it was something, I thought they were saying like ancient groove or something like that. And then when I was in college, actually the same friend that introduced me to Ivor Cutler told me about the KLF and I had seen that the KLF made this album called Chill Out, which is this like seminal ambient record. And I can't believe I just used the word seminal, but but that it was already like weird to me that this band on MTV with this basically like kind of hip hop song
right
made an ambient record,
right,
and then called Chill Out. And then later, this was when I was in college, my friend told me that the KLF had burned 1 million pounds as an art project, pounds as in money,
right,
and that and also that they had created a fake band and got to #1 with a mashup of Doctor Who and Gary Glitter, and then revealed that they had done it as a joke by writing a book that was a step-by-step how-to guide on how to have a #1 single. and they have all this like weird mythology, and the original name of the KLF was the Justified Ancients of Moo Moo, which is from a joke from the Illuminatus trilogy. And it wasn't until later I found out all of this crazy shit about the KLF that I was like, those guys? And it turns out in this song, like they were on the Brit Awards, like this song was all over MTV. And
yeah,
it was
huge.
an even bigger hit in the UK where they're from. And what they're saying is Ancients of Moo Moo in like a top 10 song, like a #1 song in the UK. And I'm just, it's like, I know those guys were like kind of industry people from the start, so it was like easier for them to get away with a lot of this stuff. But it's one of the most incredible examples of someone just completely fucking with the music industry and like exposing it for like the bullshit that it is. But I like that they said they changed their name to the KLF from the Jams because they wanted to make music that they actually liked.
That's amazing.
I just taught a class where I talk about the KLF a little bit, and I was playing them the first 2 Jam songs, and it was like at one point I had to be like, you guys understand that this is bad on purpose, right? Because no one was reacting to this like just this like Cockney British guy rapping over Dancing Queen, and it's like, this is supposed to be stupid.
Oh my god, that must be I don't know, that must be really fun to get to
it is
expose like these young people to.
I never thought Professor was going to be in the cards for me, but here we are.
Okay, we're in the home stretch.
Yeah
2 questions left. So what is the song that means the most to you, and not necessarily the song itself, but for something you associate it with, or someone, or something?
It's associated with someone, but more broadly just associated with like feelings in general. But I discovered Lamb Chop when their first album came out when I was early in high school, and a guy in a record store in Louisville named Ed Lutz was like, you might like this. And I played that first Lamb Chop album, I Hope You're Sitting Down, over and over and over and over again. Like I fell asleep to it, I don't know how many times. And my favorite song on that album, it's called I Hope You're Sitting Down. The song is called Let's Go Bowling. And then after my first year of college, I met someone who I was in a relationship with until my 30s. And one of the things we first bonded over was like, I didn't know anybody that liked Lamb Chop. And it was like, oh, you like Lamb Chop too? And like, yeah, I mean, it's weird. I'm talking about this now, that it's like so long ago and I'm like not with this person anymore. But the first dance at my at my wedding was to a Lamb Chop song. Not to Let's Go Bowling, but and so I associate it with this person who I have different feelings about now that I don't need to go into. Sure. But more than that, it's just this song that like even when I hear it now, I'm just immediately transported back to like my bedroom when I was when I was 16 or something. But it doesn't feel dated to me either. Like it's every bit as great to me now as it was then too. And I still love Lamb Chop. I still think they're a great band. I
love Lamb Chop. I always feel like Lamb Chop is like the most underappreciated of all the merge bands that have like, I love Lamb Chop and I feel like I don't know a lot of people who love Lamb Chop, but in this song
Aaron from Weird Weeds, my old band, was friends with all those people because he was from Nashville, and this was like in the early 2000s. He was like, oh yeah, they said that they don't tour the US because they can just go to Europe and like make enough money to live for a year.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, but that was they I think they're more ubiquitous now. Like I think they're pretty able to kind of play anywhere. But
they've been around forever.
I know, ages.
Well, that's I love this song. I just love everything about it.
Yep.
Okay, well, come to the end here. What is your favorite song, Sarah Hennies, at least as of this moment in time?
I did not have to think about this in so much as that it is impossible to pick a favorite song, which I'm sure everybody says that. But I will brazenly say that Born Free by Sold American is my favorite song by my favorite band off of my favorite album of theirs.
Yeah. So I Sold American. This is, again, of everything you've ever introduced me to, this is the biggest one.
Well, it's an exciting time to be a Sold American fan. I can tell you that.
I mean, I think about, oh my God, whenever because you and I have talked about Sold American many times through the years, but like, yeah, when the reissues or all that was happening, it was like, oh my God, it's really happening.
I know.
Like, and
well, as of right now, it isn't, but the new album exists. I have a really close friend of mine in Kingston, which is right across the river from where I live now, is very, very good friends with the guy who is doing everything for Sold American right now. His name's Tom Edelman. And so I somehow have stumbled into a direct line onto all things Sold American. And they are, if anyone's listening, they are looking for a label to reissue everything and release the new album.
Oh, come on. So somebody's got to be out there. Yeah. So this is also your favorite. I feel like my favorite Sold American album like fluctuates, but I don't know. They're all great.
I did go through a process that Frozen was the first one I heard, and that when I heard Frozen and Notes Campfire, and then I heard the older ones, at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't like this more upbeat stuff as much, but I just kind of slowly worked my way back until I had come to the conclusion that this was the most bulletproof discography of any band that I can think of like not one song am I ever like, I could do without that one.
Right. Well, and I remember, I think you wrote about this because you did that piece for NPR, but how the sort of improbability of it, how it was like, well, the drummer left, and they're like, well, we'll just keep going to that. and then Scott Tuma, and I could do a whole thing talking about my love of Scott Tuma, and it's like, well, we'll just keep like
you put out my favorite Scott Tuma album.
Oh, really? Which one?
Not for Nobody.
Oh God, yeah. And that was like probably a thing that wouldn't have happened because, again, like I still don't even remember how you and I met. I have no clue, honestly.
Internet something.
Yeah. But I do have like vague memories of like being at work in the early 2000s and just talking shit on AOL Instant Messenger, like,
right.
And that's where you told me about Sold American, and then like go down the Scott Tuma rabbit hole, and then I don't even remember how I got in touch with him. Like, I think it was somebody knew him and was like, hey, do you ever heard of Scott Tuma? Like, he's got a record he's trying to find. So I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And then did a couple things with him, and then went and stayed at his house when we were in Chicago a couple
cool.
times. And,
I've never met him.
He's like exactly what you imagine Scott Toomer to be. I don't know.
Right.
And he had these adorable small children at the time, which this was 15 years ago. So they're adults now.
Right.
God, it's so weird when I think about that. When I think of people, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember your kid was like 5. Like, yeah, they're 22 and just graduated college. I'm like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, that like perfect discography. Like everything is amazing.
Yeah.
God, I love Soul American.
Yeah, I'm like a Bart Simpson waiting for Krusty to show up at camp. That like for the last 20 years, I'm like, ever since that Yeti magazine came out with that song Ringside Suite, which my friend Mark in Kingston also agrees is possibly the best Soul American song. It's like, well, they recorded something. That means there's more. That means there's more.
Yeah.
And it exists. I've seen a photo of the reels on Facebook. If anyone's out there
God.
wants to join a little cabal of nerds who worship Soul American, the Facebook group is the place to be.
Sign me up for that. Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, I hope people with labels are listening to this, because this stuff needs to happen. Like, it was so close. I mean, at least the stuff is out there. I guess it's on Bandcamp is the only place it is at this point, right?
Yeah. But it deserves like more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, like Acetone is amazing, but they're getting an 11 record box set, man. Sold American.
Yeah. You could do it in 7.
Yeah. It's like small. Like, come on, Light in the Attic. Well, Sold American's the perfect place to end it. Anything in the next coming months you want to make sure people know about? I know you got I don't know if this will be out before the show next week, but it'll be on Patreon next week. But
okay.
Anything you want people?
Nothing we haven't talked about. There's some cool shit going on, but I'm not at liberty to say right now. But
Understood. Yeah. Well, everybody keep an eye out. And Sarah, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks.
Awesome. Once again, thank you to Sarah Hennies for taking the time and thanks for being Sarah. As always, you can listen to a playlist of all her picks at the link in the show notes over on YouTube. There are some absolute freaking gems in there. I'm still trying to figure out. I feel like I'm trying to figure this out for the next month, like how Acetone completely passed me by for my entire life until now. But great stuff. And and if you haven't heard Sold American yet, I put a link to that Bandcamp in the show notes too, because Sold American is like one of the greatest bands of all time. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, you can find me wherever on social media. Just look for Foxy Digitalis. You can join the Patreon, patreon.com/Foxy Digitalis. As mentioned, you get extended episodes with a special Patreon section, and this one is a freaking barn burner. And you also get the episodes a week early. So, and there's a ton of other stuff, but also you can just join the Songs of Our Lives tier, which is $3 a month, and you just get that stuff. Pretty cool. Otherwise, hope everybody's year is off to a decent enough start. And until next time, just keep on listening to whatever the hell you want.